If you've just gotten your hands on Fallout Wasteland Warfare and you're itching to get it to the table but you don't really know where to start, don't worry. In this video I'm going to show you the basic things that you need to know so that by the end of the video you'll be able to set up and play your very first game. But not only that, at the end of the video I'm also going to run through an example round with a simplified way to play that I use when demoing the game and introducing people to it that will have you playing it in no time. So one of the first things you'll want to do is actually put together your force in Fallout Wasteland Warfare. And in the game there are quite a few factions for you to build a force from Minutemen to Raiders, NCR troopers to gunners, or even robots, or a force of Deathclaws if you're wanting to recreate Quarry Junction. Like most war games, every unit, every item, every weapon has a value, and in Wasteland Warfare they are measured in caps. You won't find the caps value in your game books. Instead, for up-to-date caps values, you can check out the Modifius website. I'll leave a link to where you can find that in the video description, or alternatively, you can check out the official app for the game, which saves you having to fill out your table with cards. Just so you're aware, a regular sized force would have a 750 cap total, a small force would be about 500, which is what I usually play, and a large force would be 1,000 caps and above. There's no hard and fast rules on it though, like you might have with Warhammer 40,000. You just pick a total cap value between you and the person you're playing against, and then work it out from there. Now, when creating your force, the language that's used in the rulebook is units. I want to clarify this now because we're going to go deep on force building and it will help you understand where we're about to go. A unit is, when we distill it down, basically just a group of models that share the same name. For example, if you have 3 Minutemen models, they would be a unit. Or the Lone Wanderer is a unit. And that's important because you can have as many non-unique models in a unit as you like, but you can't have more than one unique or single model in a unit. For example, I can have a unit of like 20 Minutemen, that's totally fine. I can't have a unit of 20 Lone Wanderers or 20 Preston Garveys, if that makes sense. You equally can't have more than one single model or unique single model in a unit. So for instance, the Lone Wanderer and Preston Garvey can't be in one unit. They would be 2 individual units. Again, this is important as we go deeper. It sounds intense. It'll make sense in a second. The reason why this is important is because once we've figured out what units we want to have in our force, we then need to outfit them with weapons and items. Now, it's important to note that non-unique units have to be equipped the exact same. So for example, if I have that unit of 3 Minutemen, which is 1 unit, and a Sole Survivor, the Minutemen will all have the same equipment, and the Sole Survivor could be equipped with something else. If I had 2 Minutemen, which is 1 unit, 2 Settlers, which is 1 unit, and a Sole Survivor, which is also 1 unit, then the Minutemen would be equipped with the same loadouts, the Settlers would have the same loadouts as each other, and the Sole Survivor would have their own loadout. It's quite similar to other war games really when you distill it down, but just worded in a slightly more confusing way in the rulebook. So it's similar to games like 40k, like Warhammer 40k, where if I have a unit of Space Marines, they usually have the same weapon and loadout stats. It's the exact same here in Wasteland Warfare. If the name is the same, the loadout is also usually the same. Every force though is required to have a leader, and a leader has to be a single model unit. All that means is that they have to be a unit in your force which has a model count of 1. Unique units are always counted as single model units, i.e. Preston Garvey, Kellogg, Hammer, etc., which is why they're usually leaders, but non-unique units can also be single model units. For example, if I'm building a survivor force and I only have 1 Minuteman, I can choose to make that Minuteman my leader because they're a single model unit. I know that this all sounds a little confusing, but hopefully that makes sense. Making a model a leader is important because they get some extra perks, and you can't have a force without a leader. And once chosen, you'll take the leader card, or a leader card from the leader deck, which all have different bonuses depending on your playstyle, and you'll add this to their unit card. Some of these perks and bonuses may solely apply to the leader character, but sometimes you'll find leader cards that will apply to an entire faction. Speaking of factions, you'll know that the world of Fallout has a ton of them, and each faction in Wasteland Warfare will play slightly differently and have some additional rules and perks that you need to abide by. For instance, if I'm fielding a Brotherhood of Steel force, their faction rule is that their forces cannot contain any super mutant units that are not unique, i.e. named characters. So you could have a Brotherhood of Steel force with strong in it, for example, or hammer if you really wanted to. You won't find these additional rules in your rulebook though. You can find these faction-specific rules in the app or via the card packs, or you can check out the link in the video description where you find the errata and everything else. The final thing you need to know about force setup are heroic units. A single model unit can be made into a heroic version of that unit, which gives them special perks like gaining access to critical attacks, which is something models don't normally have access to. They can also gain access to luck points, which if you want to know more about, you can click the video above or check the video description, as well as additional action units, or action point units, sorry. To show that a unit is heroic, you're going to add the heroic card to your character card. It costs points to do this, but like a lot of these rules, if this is your first game and you're just trying to get the grips with it, you can feel free to skip all of this and just add it in later when you've played a few games. Also, if you want to learn more about this, you can check out page 50 of the core rulebook that came with the starter set, or which you can download on the Modiphius website for free. And also check out page 26 and page 27 of the campaign handbook. It explains all of this. So that is solely just how to put together your force. And don't worry, you're doing really well. It does get easier from here. So let's assume you've put together your force, and let's also assume that you know what scenario you want to play. And there are quite a few out there, including official scenarios from Modiphius to scenarios that have been made by the community. At this point, you'll set up your game table as dictated by the scenario sheet, and you'll agree with the players you're playing with about what might be impassable terrain, what terrain would or wouldn't block line of sight, and anything like this that might be relevant before you start playing, just so that you're all on the same page. If you do want to know more about these rules, you can check out page 17 of the core rules book. Now next we create the wasteland, and this is incredibly easy. We just take all of the unused item, danger, creature and stranger and event cards, and you'll shuffle them all separately. You'll set them to the side unless otherwise dictated by the scenario sheet, and that part is completed. And at this point, you've now built your force for the game, you've set up your first scenario, and you're ready to play your first few rounds. So let me get my table ready, and I'm going to run you through how I usually actually demo this game for new players, which usually has them up and running and understanding how to play the basics of this game very, very quickly. So right in front of me, I've got an incredibly basic setup in order to play through a couple of activations and show you how this all works. Normally when I'm demoing Fallout Wasteland Warfare, I'm introducing people to the game, I strip away the majority of the rules. What I do is that there's no leader cards, there's no heroic cards, there are no event or stranger or danger or creature, the wasteland card, all gone. All that I usually focus on when I'm demoing this game is that I want you to understand how activations work, how the basic actions work like shooting and melee and fighting, things like that, and just understand the flow of the game. And that's really how this demo setup kind of is built to play. So you'll see I'm using a couple of different units and cards in front of me. So over here we have all of our settler force cards. And then for the super mutants, I'm using the app. Now, if you're up to date with the rules for this game, you may notice some inconsistencies here. In the kind of original version or the older version of the rule set, every character came with kind of inbuilt armor. In a recent wave, I think it was wave 9 or whatever wave it was, which is why you won't see this on the app if you can see it on screen, our super mutant aviator has no armor, which is a little bit odd, because he looks kind of armored to me. In essence, what happened is that they changed the rules so that no character has armor as a given. You need to pay more caps for it. So that's why you won't see it there. But for the purposes of this, we're going to play with the older cards, because then it's also going to show you how armor works too. Hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, I've completely scrapped leader and heroic cards, and all I've done is I've just picked a little item. Seems to be somewhat balanced. So we'll try and pick a 3 model force and pick some weapons that are somewhat caps balanced to each other so that both teams are somewhat even. So how activation works, or how you decide who gets to go first, it's usually down to who has the fewest amount of models. In this case, everybody has the exact same amount of models. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to start with the super mutants. So the way that activation works is that if I was my super mutant player, I take one of my little tokens. It's a little token that has the Vault Boy on it with a helmet on one side and then a grayed out Vault Boy on the other. We're going to set that blue side up beside the model we want to ready up. Now in the rulebook, it then states that once you've readied up a model, you can then activate all or none readied up models. When I first read that, I was completely dumbfounded. I'm like, what does that mean? It's very simple once you start kind of getting used to it. In essence, what that means is that I can choose to now activate this aviator and carry out my 2 actions as I would normally, or I can say, I've readied him up, he's just going to wait there until later. The settler player could take their turn, it could come around to me, and let's say I want to ready up this brute, and I put the token beside him, and again, I get to ready up, or I get to activate all or none readied models. Let's say now I want to activate both of them. And when we activate all readied up models, these 2 get to take their 2 activations together. This can be really powerful and really tactical. Whenever you start kind of getting used to the game, you may realize, you know, for example, if there was a Mirelurk Queen or a Behemoth slowly marching its way towards you, you could ready up all of your models but not activate any of them, so that when the Behemoth gets really close, it's just a wall, a barrage of laser fire, so to speak. For the purposes of this, don't worry about it. You can play about with that and see what tactics open themselves up to you as you try it. But for this, I've readied up my aviator and I'm going to activate him to get his 2 actions. And we flip that over to the grey side just so it shows that that model has been spent. Now, our 2 actions are quite standard that you would find across most war games. You can move, you can shoot, you can charge, you can perform a melee attack, and then there's extra things which are very contextual, like you could lockpick or hack into a computer and things like that. Everything in Fallout Wasteland Warfare, whenever it comes to our tests or our actions, most of them are skill-based. So you'll see we have our special stats for every character in the game, and there's these little icons beside it as well, which will tell you the likelihood that that character is going to succeed in doing that thing. So for instance, our aviator here has a strength of 7, and attached to its strength stat are melee attacks, heavy weapon attacks, and unarmed attacks. That's the technical term for that one as well. And its health is attached to its endurance, which is 8. Conversely, over here for the settler, for example, its endurance is what the health is tied to, which is 4, which means it has 4 health points. So whenever we're carrying out a strength test or a skill test, we want to roll that number or lower, which I'll show to you now. So for example, let's say this aviator is now going to move. Over in the top left of the character cards, you'll see these 2 little squares. These will usually have different colors. This is the range of their movement. So for instance, the aviator has a normal movement range of yellow, which will be the yellow rulers that will come in the starter set. If you don't have the starter set, you can download the rules for that via the Modifius website. They have printouts of the rulers in the book, which are to scale. And it has a charge bonus of red. Conversely, Dogmeat has a normal movement of red, charge distance of blue, which is a much greater distance. I don't have my rulers out. They're incredibly close, they're all within range anyway. So let's just say it moves yellow to there. And let's argue that he is equipped with a pipe rifle. So he's moved up and he's now going to fire off a shot at Nora. So a pipe rifle, which our settler is equipped with, has an icon of an AK-47. So we match that icon to my aviator's character card, and we'll see that the kind of machine gun icon is on perception, which is a 6. So I know that my aviator needs to roll a 6 or less in order to successfully hit. But we've got to also see if the character is in range. So here on the pipe rifle card, I'll move my aviator so you can see, we've got a lot of icons. So this first square is short range. The second rectangle is long range. So in order to figure out kind of what dice you get to roll with, we would take the blue ruler first of all, and then measure and see if the unit we're trying to target is within that first ruler. If they're not, we then add the second distance ruler, which would be green in this case, to the blue one and see if they're within that range. If they're not within that range, you're not going to hit them. So for instance, in this one, Nora, our target, is within blue, which is short range. Because she is, we get to add a black damage dice, a yellow armor reduction dice, and a green accuracy dice to our roll. And these all can change and affect your roll in good ways, which is quite nice. If we successfully land a hit, we're going to do one material damage or one standard damage. So let's roll. You roll all the dice together, by the way, because these additional dice can and probably will affect your roll. Okay, so we rolled an 8, and then the green accuracy dice is a -1, which means that this is down to a 7. We rolled a blank on the armor reduction dice, and we rolled a armor reduction icon on the damage dice, which means that our damage would bypass 1 armor. Now, in this case, remember, our aviator has a perception of 6. This would mean that he failed this skill test and missed. For the purposes of this example, we'll say that he passed. So he has done 1 damage. He gets to bypass armor on 1 point of damage, which in this case means that his 1 point of damage goes through. We then take a little damage token. We'll put that on Nora, and now we know that Nora has taken 1 wound and she's down to 6 health. So that's the super mutant activated. Then the play would then pass over to the settler character, the settler player, who would then also, in the same way, take out a little token. Let's set it beside Nora. Actually, you know what? Let's have a bit of fun. We'll set it beside Dogmeat. We're going to ready Dogmeat up and then activate. Dogmeat has movement of red and a charge of blue. For argument's sake, let's say that he's within range of the super mutant. So he's going to move into base-to-base combat with our super mutant. We're going to flip that over. So that was his first action. His second action is to then bite with his special weapon, Dog Bite, which is for dogs only. So this is a melee attack. So you'll see we look at the little dagger icon, match that to Dogmeat, who has that paired to his agility. We're looking for 8 or less. There's no range because it's a melee attack. So we get to add a yellow dice, a green dice, and then a blue special effect dice to this roll. We're looking for 8 or under. So we got a 6. We got an armor break, which means that we'll bypass 1 piece of armor, and we got 2 stars, which we then compare to Dogmeat's card. This would mean that he gets 2 free, I think, quick actions. If we'd rolled the kind of nuclear bomb icon, it would mean that we broke a limb, which would put our opponent at a greater disadvantage. So in this case, he lands the hit. He does 2 damage, 1 of which will bypass armor. The aviator, because on the app the cards are updated, doesn't have any armor associated to him, but for the purposes of this, to show you how this dice works, let's say that our aviator has 3 armor. So what we would then do is roll our armor dice. And what we want to do with our armor dice is roll the value of our armor or under. So if we have an armor rating of 3 on the Super Mutant Aviator, we want to roll 3 or under in order to block damage. If we roll a 4, if we roll anything over the amount of armor we have, we take all of the damage. So we're looking to roll 3 or under. We roll a 1. So Dogmeat does 2 damage. 1 of his damage will bypass armor, so we'll take that anyway. The aviator then blocked 1 other point of damage with his armor, so we take 1 wound. And as such, we would then take a little damage token. We'll put that beside our aviator. So play will continue like this until all models have been activated. Once that happens, we then take away all of the little tokens that show that our models have been activated and spent, and we just repeat this until the game completes or we reach the victory conditions. That is how Fallout Wasteland Warfare plays. At its core, when you strip away a lot of the additional rules, like events and heroic items and all these kinds of things, it can be a relatively simple game to play and understand, and this is the way that I would encourage you to play it, at least for your first couple of games. Just start with kind of standard weapons like pistols and pipe rifles and simple melee weapons, just so you can understand how the flow of the game works, how the dice all work and what they do, skill tests, about armor, about all those things, before you start getting into area of effect attacks and special attacks and criticals and heroics and luck and all these kinds of things. Strip it all back, start simple, and after each game, maybe add in something a little bit extra. So for instance, once we complete this game, maybe we add in event cards and see how they play and how they affect gameplay. But that's how to set up and play Fallout Wasteland Warfare, as well as a couple of example rounds to help get you started. I hope this has made sense. If you've any questions at all, please do feel free to leave a comment down below, or alternatively, hop on over onto the Facebook group, which is incredibly helpful for asking about rule clarifications and how to play the game. I'll equally leave a link to that down in the video description as well. But in the meantime, have a great week. Hope you enjoy your games of Fallout, and I'll speak to you all soon.